Hi, you're on Reddit Confessions, and today's story starts with a leather bag, a zipped pocket, and the quiet decision to finally stop being invisible. She didn't even notice me that morning. Not really. Ember floated around the house like a celebrity late for a red carpet, Bluetooth in one ear, latte in one hand, muttering buzzwords like brand synergy and market segmentation like she invented them. Her suitcase was by the door. Her phone kept buzzing with names I wasn't supposed to ask about anymore. Her heels echoed through the hallway like countdowns to my erasure. And still, I stood there, like an unpaid assistant in his own home, watching her, hoping she'd ask me how I was, or even just look at me for more than half a second. She didn't. She never saw the moment I slipped my ring into her bag. She never heard me whisper goodbye into the silence she left behind. But she definitely read the note. I know she did, because 5 hours later, her assistant called me from the hotel lobby, panicked, asking, "What did you do?" She locked herself in the bathroom before her pitch and hasn't come out. Let me rewind a bit. This didn't happen because of a screaming match. There was no dramatic betrayal caught on camera. No lipstick on a collar. It was quieter than that. Slower. Death by 1,000 dismissals. I used to matter, I think. But somewhere between her first promotion and the third time she told me to just DoorDash something, I started realizing I'd become optional in my own marriage. Like background music you forget is playing until it stops. I'd hear her laugh at texts she wouldn't let me see. She started locking her iPad, changing her perfume. Once, she left a voice memo playing by mistake. I only caught 3 seconds before she yanked her phone away. A man's voice. Deep. Confident. Familiar with her. She said it was a podcast. I didn't push. I never pushed. Instead, I watered her plants, charged her devices, reheated her food when she forgot to eat. And I waited for her to come back to me, for us to feel like us again. That moment never came, but the Miami trip did. It was all she talked about for weeks. The VIP mixer, the keynote, the rooftop investors lounge. She said this was her pivot point. What she didn't know was that it would also be mine. The night before her flight, while she was passed out with noise-canceling headphones on and her calendar still open on the couch, I quietly packed a box. Not for her, for me. And then I unzipped the side pocket of her handbag, the one she never uses, and dropped in my wedding ring. Next to it, I placed a single note. Not a long letter. Not a confession. Just, if your new life doesn't include me, don't worry. I already stepped out. She left the next morning without saying goodbye. But when she opened that bag in the VIP lounge just before her biggest meeting, that was the real beginning of the end. When Ember's assistant called me, her voice cracked on the second sentence. She just sat down in the VIP lounge and opened her bag. And then, she's gone pale, like she's seen a ghost. She said she needed a minute and ran into the bathroom. That was 20 minutes ago. Thad, what did you write in that note? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because Ember knew exactly what it meant. And I think that was the first time she'd truly heard me in years, because I hadn't said a word. It's funny. I used to imagine how a confrontation would go. I'd catch her red-handed. She'd cry. Maybe beg. I'd scream. Slam a door. Something movie-worthy. But in real life, betrayal's not a firestorm. It's a slow drip, a flickering light you convince yourself isn't broken until you're sitting in the dark. After she left for Miami, I didn't celebrate or cry or even eat. I just sat there at the kitchen table, staring at the ring she used to love. The one I'd taken out of the jewelry box she hadn't opened in months. I kept asking myself why I still cared. Why I didn't just leave first. Why I waited for her to finally discard me like last season's trends. And then I remembered. Because I wanted it to be real again. I wanted to be loved like before. I wanted to matter. But people like Ember don't fall out of love with you. They evolve past you. Like you're some outdated app that can't keep up with the latest upgrade. At 3:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from her. Just 3 words. You did this. I stared at it for a long time, then turned my phone over. It buzzed again. And again. I didn't read the others. I didn't need to. That one message told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't hurt. She was exposed and mad I'd taken away her script. I went upstairs and opened our bedroom closet. For the first time, I looked at it like a stranger would. Empty hangers. Her shoes aligned like soldiers. My clothes, pressed against one corner like they didn't belong there. That's when I knew. I'd been a placeholder in my own home. What I didn't know yet was what Ember had planned next. Because the moment she left that VIP lounge, humiliated and furious, she didn't head to her hotel room. She headed somewhere else entirely. And the next person to call me wasn't her assistant. It was the man she thought I'd never find out about. When the unknown number lit up my screen, I thought it was Ember calling from a different line. But the voice that spoke wasn't hers, it was a man's. Calm, measured, but almost too familiar. Hey Thad. Look, I didn't expect to be calling you. Ever. But I think it's time we talk. I stood completely still, phone pressed to my ear like I couldn't believe it was real. I didn't respond. My silence seemed to unsettle him more than anything. After a beat, he sighed. She left her phone on the bar. I read your note. I saw the ring. I just figured you deserved some answers. His name was Vincent. Ember's colleague from Atlanta. The one she always said was just her logistics partner. I didn't say anything, still trying to process that the person I'd always thought was a background character had been the leading man in my wife's secret life. He went on. Said they met during a conference nearly a year ago. Said it started as emotional support. Claimed she cried about how I didn't understand her ambition. That I was holding her back. That I liked small lives, small jobs, and safe routines. Vincent said they never meant to fall into anything. That it was messy and uncertain and, his words, not planned. But they'd been seeing each other ever since. Hotels, work trips, business dinners that weren't really about business. Then came the line I didn't expect, but she never told me she was staying married. I nearly dropped the phone. Apparently, Ember had told him we were separated, that I had moved out emotionally a long time ago, that we only lived together out of convenience. And the worst part? He believed her. He said he only found out the truth when he saw my ring and note in her bag. That was when he realized something didn't add up. I'm not calling to beg or defend her, Vincent said. I just thought you should hear it. From someone who got played too. Played. The word hit me like a punch to the chest. Not because it was new, but because it was finally, undeniably true. Ember hadn't just betrayed me. She'd rewritten me. Turned me into a footnote in her personal success story. After I hung up, I sat in our living room, staring at the framed photo on the wall. The one from our 5th anniversary in Big Sur. Her smile looked different now. Practiced. Distant. Like she already knew the lies she'd eventually tell about me. And that's when I realized something I hadn't fully faced until that moment. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about erasure. She was trying to erase me from her story before I even knew the chapter was ending. But now I was rewriting the ending myself. I spent most of that evening walking in circles around my own house. I didn't touch my phone, even though it vibrated constantly. I didn't open her texts. I didn't read her missed calls. I just stared at the furniture we bought together, at the rug she picked out during our minimalist phase, at the framed quotes on the wall that now felt like inside jokes I was never part of. My house felt like someone else's showroom. Nothing personal anymore, just curated, branded, perfect. Like her. Around 11 p.m., headlights flooded through the front window. I didn't even need to look. The way they pulled in, fast but controlled, told me it was her. She didn't bother with the doorbell. She walked in like she still lived there. Technically, she did. Legally. But emotionally, she'd moved out the moment she started texting him goodnight instead of me. Ember stood in the entryway, looking at me like I was the intruder. Her hair was still styled for the conference, but her face had changed, less polished now. Her voice was tight. You really thought that was the way to handle it? Sabotage me? Humiliate me? Right before my pitch. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to give her that power. She stepped closer, throwing her bag onto the couch. I couldn't even focus. You blindsided me in front of my entire team. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. You've been blindsiding me for months, I finally said. Only difference is, I didn't wait for applause afterward. She scoffed, crossed her arms, and muttered something under her breath. Then came the real bomb. It wasn't serious. Vincent. He was a phase. He helped me feel seen. That's all. That word, seen, almost broke me. Because I'd spent years trying to be invisible just so she could shine. And now, I was the problem because I hadn't sparkled enough in her shadow. I looked at her and asked the question I never thought I'd need to. Was any of it real? For a second, I saw it. Guilt. Just a flash. Then it was gone. Replaced with that icy, corporate confidence she used in meetings. It was until it wasn't. With that, she turned away. Like we were done. Like that was all I was owed. She went upstairs and shut the door. Not a slam. Not a dramatic exit. Just silence. I stood in the hallway alone, the air so thick with unfinished things I could barely breathe. It wasn't the betrayal that cut the deepest. It was how casually she moved past it. The next morning, the house was so quiet it didn't even feel real. No footsteps on the hardwood. No coffee grinder whirring in the kitchen. No Ember yelling at Siri to reschedule a meeting she'd double-booked. Just stillness, like the aftermath of a storm that somehow managed to leave everything standing but stripped it of color. I stayed downstairs while she moved around above me, packing in silence. She didn't come down. She didn't ask if we were going to talk. And I didn't go up, because there was nothing left to say. What haunted me wasn't what she did with Vincent. It wasn't even that she lied. It was how smoothly she transitioned into a version of herself that had no room for me. I was background, edited out of the final cut. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She just adjusted. Like I was some outdated file in her Dropbox, quietly dragged to trash. Around noon, I finally went into my bedroom. Her half of the closet was emptier. The hanging organizers were gone. She even took her ridiculous bamboo makeup mirror that never fit anywhere on our small bathroom counter. There was only one thing left behind on her side of the bed. A folded note. Just like the one I had left in her bag. But hers wasn't handwritten. It was printed. Cold. Impersonal. No punctuation, not even a goodbye. It read, "I'll have someone reach out about the logistics. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." That line replayed in my head for hours. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. As if I was the one dragging my feet. As if she hadn't gutted me with months of manipulation and secrecy and then decided to vacuum the emotional mess like a clean exit was still an option. Later that day, I went to her office's public website, something I hadn't done in years. She was already removed from the team page. I scrolled through the leadership section, new faces, new bios, like she never existed there. No mention of her brand strategy pivot or her investor win. She'd vanished. Which meant one thing. She hadn't just walked away from me. She had walked away from everything. Vincent must have known more than he let on. I started wondering if she had planned it all long before the note in the bag. Maybe she used the pitch trip as her launch point. Maybe she had no intention of ever coming home. Maybe my note just forced her to admit it a day earlier. But then something strange happened. 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. Not Vincent. Not Ember. A woman's voice this time. Nervous. Shaky. "Hi. You don't know me, but I work with Ember. Or I did. I probably shouldn't be calling, but I thought you should know what really happened after she opened your note." And just like that, I realized the story wasn't over. It was only starting to unravel. Her name was Mallory. I recognized it because Ember had mentioned her once in passing, said she was too emotional for PR, always asking invasive personal questions, always a little too interested in everyone's lives. I'd filed the name away without a second thought. But now Mallory was on the phone with me, her voice low like she was afraid of being overheard, and what she told me peeled back layers I hadn't even realized were there. She never made it to the presentation, Mallory said. Everyone was waiting. The investors, her boss, the board members, everyone. She disappeared for almost an hour, and when she came back, she looked like she'd been crying. Not quietly. The kind of crying where people start whispering behind their hands. I didn't say anything. I just let her talk. She said she needed a minute to compose herself, but then she started snapping at people. Pacing. Then she walked into the meeting 15 minutes late and acted like nothing happened. But she fumbled through everything, forgot key stats, skipped half the deck, and then someone asked about your note. I blinked hard. What? She didn't know we'd seen it, Mallory continued. But Vincent showed it to someone. It spread fast. Half the room knew. One of the interns said it was poetic. Her being exposed right before trying to sell a brand based on authenticity. I'm not calling to gossip. I just thought you should know. You weren't the only one she fooled. That hit harder than I expected. I wasn't special in this fallout. I was just the first domino. Before Mallory hung up, she said something that stuck with me more than anything. I used to look up to her. She made it seem like she had it all together. But after that day, I realized she wasn't building something. She was hiding in it. I sat on the floor for a long time after that. Not on a chair. Not at a desk. Just on the floor. Because for once, I felt like the truth was settling, and I needed to be grounded when it did. This whole time, I told myself I wasn't enough for Ember, that I'd become too predictable, too small, too boring. But maybe that wasn't the truth at all. Maybe she needed chaos to distract from how lost she was becoming. And maybe I had simply gotten caught in the blast radius of a woman who never stopped running from herself. I thought about texting her, not to fight, not to plead, just to ask if any of it mattered. But then I remembered the printed note she'd left me. No punctuation, no warmth, just logistics. She hadn't left space for conversation, only for cleanup. So instead, I opened a blank document on my laptop and began typing out everything, from the first missed dinner to the last cold stare, because I needed it out of me. I needed the truth to exist somewhere outside my head. That's when I decided to share it here, because someone else might be sitting in silence, thinking they're the only one. And they're not. I didn't hear from Ember for 4 days. 4 full days of silence after she stormed out of the house with a suitcase and that same air of superiority she always wore when she thought she had the upper hand. I assumed she was licking her wounds somewhere warm, surrounded by people who didn't know what she'd done, or worse, people who did and didn't care. That part always haunted me more than the betrayal itself. The thought that someone else could know everything and still want to be close to her, still think she was worthy of love, while I, the one who actually stayed, became disposable. On the 5th day, I got a knock at the door. Not a text, not a call. A physical knock, loud and steady like someone wanted to wake the entire neighborhood. I opened it, expecting maybe a courier or someone trying to sell me a solar panel system I couldn't afford. But it was Ember. No makeup, no blazer, just a hoodie and sunglasses. Looking more like someone who'd just come from a walk of shame than a woman who had once controlled rooms with a glance. For the first time in months, she didn't look like she was in charge. And honestly, I didn't know how to feel about that. "I came to talk," she said, removing the sunglasses and looking past me, like she wasn't sure if I'd let her in. I didn't move. I just asked, "Why now?" She hesitated, then pulled something out of her pocket. Not a gift, not a key. It was the note, the one I had left in her bag, crumpled at the edges, but still legible. "This didn't just mess up my pitch," she said quietly. "It cracked something open." I let her in, not because I forgave her, but because part of me needed to hear what lie she'd come up with now. She sat on the couch like she didn't recognize it anymore. "You know what hurt most?" she said. "That you didn't yell, that you didn't even ask why." "Would you have answered?" I asked. She looked down. That was answer enough. She started talking about her childhood, about watching her mother cycle through relationships like job titles, how she promised herself she'd never be dependent on anyone, how success became her armor, how I, someone steady, predictable, kind, scared her more than failure ever did, because it meant she might actually have to stay. I listened, not because I believed it excused what she did, but because for once, it wasn't a presentation. It was messy, cracked, almost human. "I didn't cheat because of you," she whispered. "I cheated because I thought I had to destroy what felt too safe before it destroyed me." That's when it hit me. I wasn't a victim of some passionate affair. I was collateral damage in a war she was waging against herself. And yet, that didn't hurt any less. She asked me if we could start over, and I gave her the same silence she once gave me. Because some notes don't need a response. They just need to be read. She stayed for almost an hour that day, but I never offered her coffee. I didn't invite her back in after she stepped outside to take a call. I watched her through the front window as she stood in the same spot where I once carried her inside after our wedding. It was strange, seeing her there again, but the weight in my chest wasn't pain anymore. It was release. When she finally left, she didn't ask for anything. No second chances. No promises. Just a final glance, half regret, half relief. She said, "You're stronger than I gave you credit for." Then she walked away, and this time, I didn't feel abandoned. That night, I packed the last of her things into a box. Not out of spite, but peace. The kind of peace you earn after sitting with your heartbreak long enough that it stops echoing. I found an old photo of us from years ago, laughing on a road trip, sunburnt and in love. I didn't throw it away. I just placed it in the box with everything else. Some memories don't need to be destroyed. They just don't belong on the shelf anymore. In the weeks that followed, I started waking up early again, not out of anxiety, but out of curiosity. I started cooking real meals, not just leftovers for two. I found a therapist. I joined a book club. I walked trails without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I didn't reinvent myself. I remembered myself. I'm not writing this to say I won, or that everything's perfect. Life doesn't work like that. But I can tell you this. I no longer feel like someone who was left. I feel like someone who got free. And for anyone reading this who's sitting in silence, wondering if the pain ever settles, it does. Not all at once. Not cleanly. But eventually. One breath at a time. I don't know what Ember's doing now. I don't need to. Her story moved on without me, and mine's just getting good. Thanks for listening. You're watching Reddit Confessions. If you've made it this far, I hope this story reminded you that endings aren't always tragedies. Sometimes they're just overdue beginnings. Drop a comment and tell us. What's one turning point in history that changed everything? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time.